everyone, and welcome back to Lesson 3 of learning how to use your Brother or your Babylock multi-needle machine. My name is Kat from Cyber Sewing School, and today we're going to be learning how to thread your machine. So let's get started. A tool that I highly recommend that you purchase is something that's very inexpensive, but it's going to go a long way toward making threading your machine a whole lot easier, and that would be floss threaders. So these can be purchased at any national chain for drugstores like CVS or Walgreens, and they look like this, and I'll do a close-up right now, and these are just going to make things so easy for you. The next thing you're going to need is a good quality thread. So I recommend purchasing name brands. For example, Exquisite, Simplicity Pro. There are so many others out there that are really good. The one thing I do want to caution you to is when you go and maybe you go to Amazon and you see an outstanding deal, or what you think is a deal, of maybe something like 100 spools of embroidery thread for $40. Well, you may be getting the steal of the decade, or you may be getting something that gives you your worst nightmare when you're trying to use your machine. So please invest in good quality thread. I'm ready to get started threading my machine. So on the side of my machine, I have 10 spools of embroidery thread placed here and ready to go. So now I'm just going to adjust my machine and get started threading it. My machine is plugged into a surge protector, and before I even turn it on, I'm going to loosen these two screws right here and right here so that I can adjust the screen to be able to see it a little bit better and also get it out of the way. So I'll swing this to the front, and I'm going to lock in both of these screws. So I'm going to rotate this around and take you right to the back, and we're going to get started. Everyone has their own way of threading their machine, but I like to thread it from the insides out, so it prevents tangling and me getting my hands in between the threads, so it makes it a little bit easier for me. When I am testing my tensions, I like to use bold colors on the back. I don't like to use white because it's hard to see white embroidery thread against the white bobbin thread, so I like to use colors that I can see very easily if my tensions are correct. Before we bring the threads up to the guides, there is a guide in the front here. These are closed, and there is a tab right here at the top. You want to move this tab over to the right so you can see through each of the holes. Then I'm going to take thread number 5, and this is where my floss threader really comes in handy. And I'm going to put it through the floss threader. And you want to make sure that you pull enough so that it leaves a nice long tail. I'm going to put it into my number 5, put it through the next 5, right here, and then through the next one. So these are all numbered and coded on the back so I can easily see where these threads go. I will let that hang down, and then I'm going to start with number 4. And I'm going to do the same thing, and you are going to do this for all of your threads on your machine. So let's get this through all the guides. Now for number 4, on some of these spools you're not going to have guides on the back. You have back guides for 1, 3, and 5, but not for 2 and 4. So you're just going to go right to the front here, bring it down, and then put it through number 4 on the front. Put it through, let it hang. And I'm going to continue and do all the threads in this manner. And now we're going to do the right-hand side, starting from the inside going out. And you can see how easy this is to use with a floss threader, and working from the inside out just makes it a lot easier to avoid your tangles. All right, so we have all our threads on the back of our machine. I'm going to turn the machine around, and then we're going to pull it through to the front. Now I'm going to turn my machine on for the first time. So your power button is right here in the back, right in front of the port for the power cord. Flip it and you turn your machine on for the first time. So we're going to let this calibrate and do its thing. It does remind you every day when you turn it on that you should be oiling the bobbin area right here. We're not there yet, but we'll get there. Touch the screen, press OK, press OK again, and the machine will calibrate and do its thing. All right, so now we are ready to go in and pull our threads down into the appropriate guides in the front. So I'm going to zoom in up here so you can see what's happening. All 10 threads are now through the top guide of the machine. So I'm going to take all of these threads right here and just clip them short, because if they're too long coming out the front, when you're going to thread your machine down in this area, it becomes a little tricky. You don't want all of these threads tangling together. Starting with the first thread, we have to pull the thread from the top guide 1 into the corresponding guide on this bar right here. So if you feel more comfortable using your fingers to do this, I find it a little easier to use my floss threader. That's what I like to use, and put it through the hole and then down. And then I take my floss threader out. This is just how I do it. You can do it any way you want. Put it back in the floss threader, because now there is a guide, a circular guide, right behind each one of these knobs. Find the hole for thread 1, put it through, and I take my floss threader off because I like to use my fingers, hold it like dental floss, and you can hear it click through this guide right here. Then we're going to take our thread like dental floss and put it between the cup and the saucer. So right here, there's a groove in there. Bring it through, floss it, bring it down and around, so one full rotation. It comes out the right-hand side. You're going to put it to the right of this spindle right here. Bring it down, follow the arrows, and put it to the left of this spindle right here. Hold it like dental floss. You have another guide here that is similar to the one in the back. Floss it through, and then we can bring it down into the slot right on the front here. Once the thread is snapped into this guide right here, we're going to bring it down into this first groove, up and then into the take-up lever. The take-up lever is a hole and not a hook, and I do find it easier, again, to use that floss threader. So I'll just pull that thread through and then put it right through the hole. If you find it easier, again, to use your fingers, by all means do so. And then just make sure that when you bring your thread down, it is not going over, it is going into this second groove right here. Now you do have one more guide here. These guides are labeled 10 down to 1. There is a hole right here. So I'll bring that thread straight down and then right through the hole with the threader. I find that this is the trickiest guide of all. Bring it right through, and then I'm just going to let it stay there, and then I'm going to thread every needle, and I'll quickly do number 2 for you, and then I'm going to thread it off screen from 3 through 10. I'll take the number 2 thread, and again, if it's too long coming out, like these other threads over here, just clip them, and I need to put it into this number 2 guide. Again, especially if you're short, sometimes it's very hard to see that hole. So I'll put it right through my floss threader and stick it right into the number 2 guide here and pull it through, and then pull it through the circular guide behind this number 2 guide here. So put it right into that hole and then pull it right out. Just make sure it doesn't get tangled with any other threads. And there I have it through. Now if at any time you feel like your thread is too long, again, I just cut that thread, set that aside, and then I'll take my number 2 thread and I'm going to hold it like dental floss and put it into that clamp guide on the right. And I can kind of hear it click into place. I'm going to follow the guide on the top of the machine down, and I'm going to put it through that cup and saucer for number 2. And there's no spindle for number 2, so I'm just going to come straight off number 2, put it to the left of this spindle, and there again, hold it like dental floss, and you can hear it click into place behind this clamp. Bring the thread down into this groove right here, up. We're going to go into the take up lever and use my floss threader and put it through the hole for the take up lever. Make sure your threads aren't tangling. Bring it straight down, right through this slot right here. You have your last guide for number 2 right here. There's a hole right there. Put the tip of your floss threader through that guide and then pull it right through, and number 2 is almost all threaded. At this point, you're ready to thread needles 3 through 10 in similar fashion. You want to pay attention to the direction in which the threads are being placed according to the diagrams on the top of your machine. For needles 1 through 5, your thread is going to go on the left-hand side of the spindles, and for needles 6 through 10, when your thread comes off of the tension, you're going to go to the right of the spindle, and then you're going to snap it into the corresponding guides. I want you to thread the rest of your machine, and then I'll join you down near the needle to use the needle threader. To use the needle threader, we have to tell the machine what needle we want to thread first. So press this icon here, then press needle number 1 if it's not already at the default selected, and then press OK. This makes sure the head of the machine and the needle threader is in line with needle number 1. When you want to switch the needle that needs to be threaded, again, press this icon and you can choose whatever needle you want to thread, and the carriage of the machine will move over so the needle threader is in alignment with that needle that you have selected. I'll press number 1 again to go back to needle number 1 and then press OK. This button right here on the screen of your machine is the needle threader. So when I say to press the needle threader button, this is what you're going to press to bring that needle threader down, and this is what you're going to press again to bring the thread through the eye of the needle. You will want to get your needle threading device out, and that is right here, because this is going to help us get our thread through the guides behind the needle. Hold your thread in one hand, use your needle threader device in the other, and you want to push this back into the guide behind the needle so it slides into this guide and right down in the front. So your thread is right behind this guide. Next thing you're going to do is push the needle threader button that I showed you before on your machine. The wiper will come down. So there are 2 hooks on the wiper, one to the left and one to the right of the needle, and the hook is going through the eye of the needle. So you can use your fingers or you can use your tool, but I like to put it under both those hooks and under this hook right here. Very important. Bring it up and over your cutter, swipe it down and to the right, your thread cuts, and then you press your needle threader button again on your machine, and the wiper will pull it right back and your needle is threaded, and you are good to go with needle number 2 now. So let's switch the machine to needle number 2. On your screen, you're going to press this icon here, press needle number 2. The head of the machine will move over, and now we're ready to get threading number 2. Take thread number 2, insert the thread into your needle threading device, put it behind the hook guide here, then press the button on your machine to bring down the wiper, and then you can use your fingers or the threader tool and put it under the hooks to the left and to the right of the needle and under this larger hook right here. Bring your thread straight up, swipe it over to the right on your cutter up here, and then press the needle threader button again. There we go. Now let's work needles 3 through 10 and get our machine all threaded so we're ready to do a tension test. The wiper is now engaged behind needle number 2. I'll take needle number 2 thread, put it in the fork, and put it up into the guide behind needle 2. The thread will slide down into this guide right here. Then I'm going to take this, and however you feel more comfortable using this, if you need to use this a little bit more, if you can do it with your fingers, that is fine. and then bring it up and over the cutter and down. Press your needle threader button on your machine, on the panel. Oh, didn't work. Wait, what did you just see? Yes, I brought home my brand new multi-needle and I went to use the needle threader and it stopped working after needle 1. In fact, it worked for 5 needles, but it didn't work for the other 5. So what do you do when you find you have a faulty needle threader? You have a couple options. So number 1, if you are not familiar with embroidery and you have never embroidered before, I would highly suggest taking your machine back to your dealer and they can either adjust your needle threader for you or they can swap it out for a new needle threader. However, there's also number 2. If you feel quite handy and you are familiar with embroidery, there are several videos on YouTube that show you how to swap out a Brother or a Babylock needle threader on a multi-needle. I will also be doing my own video at some point in time in the future to help you out with this as well. So either way, easily fixable, you can decide what you feel comfortable with. All right, let's move on to lesson 4.